The great space station floated above the neutral world of Vera, its silver towers glimmering against the black sky. This was the seat of the Galactic Council, the place where the most powerful species in known space gathered to speak, argue, and decide the fate of countless worlds. Every cycle, ships of many designs and sizes came here, docking at the vast ring-shaped port that wrapped around the station. On this day, a new ship entered the station's long-range sensors. It was smaller than most warships, darker in color, and had a shape that was strange to the trained eyes of the Council's guards. The hull was thick, with sharp edges and a design that seemed almost outdated. The scanners confirmed its origin, human. Humans were still considered newcomers in the great arena of interstellar politics. Barely 100 years had passed since they had launched their first faster-than-light vessel. The Council races had centuries, even millennia, of space travel experience. To them, humanity was young, untested, and still learning how to survive in the galaxy. And yet, the humans had requested something unusual: to bring a fully armed warship, called the Resolute, for an official fleet capability assessment. It was a bold move for such a new species. The request had been granted, partly out of curiosity and partly out of amusement. The Council wanted to see what these newcomers thought they could build. As the Resolute moved closer, its dark armor caught the light of the nearby star. The hull seemed to drink in the light instead of reflecting it. A few watching officers thought it looked menacing, but most simply saw it as primitive. Within the main council chamber, representatives from dozens of species gathered at the viewing gallery. The chamber itself was shaped like a circle, with each delegation seated in curved rows around a central open space. Holographic displays floated above them, showing a live feed of the docking bay where the human ship approached. Some delegates whispered to each other in their own languages. Others laughed quietly. "Their engines are bulky," said the silver-scaled envoy of the Tower Union, watching the screen with a smirk. "I doubt they can sustain high warp speeds for long. It looks like a cargo hauler from the old wars," added a long-limbed Vothar delegate, whose people were known for their sleek, needle-like cruisers. "They probably build it from spare parts," joked a member of the Zarth collective, his voice carrying just enough for the humans who were present in the upper gallery to hear. Captain Rion stood with his crew, watching the screen without a hint of reaction. He was tall, with short dark hair and a calm, focused look in his eyes. Round him, his officers remained silent. They had expected this. Humanity's rival in the galactic stage had been met with doubt from the beginning. Today would be no different, at least not at first. The Resolute drifted into docking position, guided by the station's control systems. Magnetic clamps locked onto the hull with a deep metallic thud. The airlock doors began to cycle, preparing for the boarding process. A voice echoed through the chamber, translated into dozens of languages at once. "The vessel Resolute, representing the Human Confederation, is now docked. Its captain and senior officers will present themselves before the council." The humans stepped forward, their boots clicking on the polished floor of the grand hall. Rion led them with steady steps, his eyes moving over the alien faces that watched their approach. He saw amusement, curiosity, and in a few, something sharper wariness. The central podium awaited them. Behind it, the High Speaker of the Council, a tall and robed figure from the ancient Marith people, gestured for silence. The murmurs faded, though a few could still be heard. "Captain Rion," the High Speaker began, "you have brought your warship to us for evaluation. This is unusual for a new member of our interstellar community. May I ask why?" Rion's voice was calm, his words measured. "The Human Confederation believes in transparency. If we are to stand among the stars as equals, our friends and allies should know what we are capable of. We have nothing to hide." Several delegates exchanged amused glances. The Zarth representative leaned forward, his voice carrying a mocking tone. "Perhaps you should have hidden the ship itself. Our eyes are already weary from its crew lines and thick armor. Tell me, Captain, is this a mining tug you have repainted for the occasion?" A few quiet laughs followed. Rion showed no sign of anger. The Resolute was built for one purpose: to survive any battle it enters. Form follows function. The Tauri envoy spoke next, his scaled head tilting. Survive? Against what? We see no advanced stealth systems, no energy-efficient design. This ship is heavy, slow, inefficient. Appearances, Rian replied simply, are often misleading. The High Speaker raised a hand. Enough. The evaluation will proceed according to protocol. The Resolute will undergo a full systems scan in the assessment bay. All readings will be shared with the Council. Until then, I ask for patience. The humans gave a respectful bow before turning to leave the chamber. The Council delegates watched them go, their expressions ranging from boredom to mild amusement. Only a few, those who had studied humanity more closely, seemed curious to see the results. Back at the docking bay, Rian and his crew boarded a small transport that carried them across the station to the assessment sector. The bay was enormous, filled with towering sensor pylons and scanning arrays that could map a ship down to the last bolt. Technicians from different species moved about, adjusting controls and preparing for the procedure. The Resolute floated at the center of the bay, surrounded by an invisible grid of scanning beams. Its dark hull seemed even more imposing here, lit by the cold white lights of the facility. Lieutenant Mara, standing beside Rian, lowered her voice. They're laughing now, sir. That's going to change. Rian gave the faintest nod. Let them laugh. The truth will speak for itself. Outside the bay's reinforced windows, members of the Council and their aides had gathered to watch. The first phase of the scan was about to begin. They expected confirmation of their assumptions: primitive weapons, outdated engines. Nothing to take seriously. The hum of the scanners filled the air. Lines of light swept across the Resolute's surface, mapping every plate of armor, every curve of its hull. On the massive hull screens, data began to appear. At first, the readings matched the expectations: standard hull density, common reactor output levels, nothing unusual. But deep inside the ship, far beyond the first layers of armor, there were secrets waiting to be uncovered. The bright light of the scanning bay reflected off the Resolute's hull, making its surface look like black stone carved into sharp angles. Around the bay's observation deck, alien delegates leaned forward in their seats, ready to see what the humans considered a warship. For them, this was not just an evaluation. It was entertainment. The Zarth representative, a tall figure, with pale green skin and eyes like polished glass, tapped his clawed fingers on the railing. You see that armor? They think thick plating will protect them in modern combat. How quaint. The Tauri envoy gave a slow chuckle. Their engines are probably older than my grandfather. I bet they could not outrun a small cargo freighter. A group of Karun scientists, whose species had never lost a battle in 300 years, took notes on glowing slates. One of them muttered in his buzzing voice, "Waste of material, inefficient energy flow. Humans have much to learn." Even the more polite races allowed themselves small smiles. The humans' choice to bring such a heavy, old-looking ship into the heart of galactic politics seemed, to them, like a bold but foolish gesture. Inside the bay, Captain Rian stood with Lieutenant Mara and Chief Engineer Solon. They watched from a control balcony while the scanners passed over their ship in slow, precise arcs. Rian's face remained calm, but Mara could see the slight tension in his jaw. She knew him well enough to understand. It was not anger at the insults, but the weight of the moment. Sir, Mara said quietly. How long until the first readings reach them? Moments, Rian replied. Then the noise will grow louder. He was right. The first wave of scan results appeared on the giant holoscreens for all to see. The readings showed external armor composition, surface density, and basic engine design. The numbers were respectable, but not extraordinary. From the observation deck, the Tauri envoy leaned back, exactly as expected. Thick, outdated plating. Reactor output barely acceptable for sustained operations. The Zarth representative grinned. Do they plan to fight wars by standing still and hoping the enemy gets tired? A ripple of laughter spread among the delegates. Rian's crew, standing at attention nearby, heard every word. Some shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke. They had been briefed before arriving. Let the council mock. Let them underestimate. It would make the reveal more powerful. The next phase of the scan began. This time, the beams penetrated deeper, mapping internal systems and structural supports. The technicians worked with smooth precision, their instruments humming as data flowed across their stations. One Karun scientist frowned slightly as he studied the early internal readings. Strange, he murmured to his colleague. Their power distribution network is unusual. Unusual how? The other asked. The scientist shrugged. We will see. Perhaps it is a fault in the scan. Meanwhile, the mocking continued. The Vothar delegate, with his long, thin arms folded across his chest, commented, "They must have built this ship in deep space, far from real shipyards. That would explain the crude lines." Another voice joined in from the corner of the deck. It was Ambassador Turvin of the Hellery, a species known for their open disdain toward humans. "This entire display is for show. When the final readings arrive, we will see nothing but an overbuilt freighter with too many weapons bolted to its hull." From the balcony below, Solon glanced at Rian. "They are working hard to convince themselves, Captain, that," Rian said, "is their mistake." The second set of readings began to appear on the main display. A low murmur rippled through the technicians. The energy grid inside the Resolute was unlike anything they had expected. Instead of standard branching conduits that fed specific sections of the ship, the network was interwoven into the hull itself, forming a kind of living framework. Power could be rerouted instantly to any part of the vessel without loss. But the council delegates did not notice this detail yet. Their eyes were still locked on the more familiar numbers, and their words still carried the same tone: primitive. "Construction methods," said the Towery envoy. "Even their cargo bays are reinforced." "Who does that?" "Perhaps they plan to carry rocks into battle," replied the Zarth representative with a smirk. Another laugh passed through the group, but it was weaker than before. A few of the scientists in the corner were looking more closely at the energy grid data. The third scan phase began, pushing deep into the heart of the Resolute. The beams passed through armored bulkheads, core shielding, and the reactor housing. Suddenly, the murmuring on the technician's floor grew louder. One technician, a Marith with pale blue skin, adjusted his console twice, thinking his instruments were faulty, but the numbers did not change. The reactor output was far beyond safe norms, yet stable. The Karun scientist from earlier stiffened. In his seat, that cannot be right. A reactor running at that level should be overheating. There should be visible energy bleed. "Are your instruments calibrated?" another asked sharply. "They are calibrated," the Marith technician replied, his voice low. "This is correct." The words carried across the observation deck. The laughter began to fade. Captain Rian watched the shift in body language above. Delegates leaned forward, eyes narrowing, voices quieter. The first seed of doubt had been planted. But still, some resisted. "It is an error," the Zarth representative said firmly. "The humans have probably modified their reactor to cheat the scan." The high speaker's voice, calm but commanding, cut through the low chatter. "The Council's scanning arrays are immune to tampering, if the readings are as reported." Then we are seeing reality. Silence followed for several seconds. Mara leaned toward Rian. "We are not even at the best part yet." "I know," Rian said. "Let them adjust slowly." The technicians continued their work, moving the scanning beams deeper into the Resolute systems. The next set of data would begin to uncover the weapons arrays, but that was still to come. For now, the delegates above began whispering in smaller groups. Some still smiled, but it was no longer the confident amusement of earlier. Others looked as though they were trying to recall everything they thought they knew about human engineering. Ambassador Turvin crossed his arms and spoke to the Towery envoy in a low voice. "Even if the reactor is true, their weapons will not match it. This is still a clumsy ship." "We will see," the Towery replied. In the bay, the last lines of the second phase scan ended. The Resolute stood silent, its dark hull absorbing the cold light around it. The hum of the scanners ceased for a moment as the technicians recalibrated for the third phase. In that pause, the atmosphere in the observation deck felt different, less like a comedy performance, more like the slow turning of a tide. Rian knew what was coming next, and he also knew that after the next readings appeared, there would be no more laughter. The great scanning bay of the council was alive with sound and light. Dozens of sensor pylons glowed softly as their emitters powered up. For the third phase of the inspection, the air was cool and dry, filled with the faint hum of machinery older than many civilizations. This facility had scanned thousands of ships, freighters, warships, diplomatic cruisers, but it had never hosted a vessel like the Resolute. The human warship stood at the center of the circular bay, silent and unmoving. Its dark armor seemed almost to swallow the white glow of the overhead lights. The technicians, drawn from several different species, worked in silence now. The earlier casual chatter had faded. The first two phases of the scan had given them results they could not explain, and they were professionals who did not enjoy the feeling of uncertainty. From the balcony above, Captain Rion and his officers stood with calm discipline. Lieutenant Mara watched the observation deck on the far side of the bay. The alien delegates were quieter now. Many leaned forward in their seats, their eyes fixed on the holoscreens. The easy smiles and smirks from before were gone, replaced by careful attention. Below the delegates, the lead technician, a tall, four-armed Helrani, adjusted the calibration dials. Beginning deep core structural mapping, he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. This phase will include full weapons array analysis and internal reinforcement scans. The scanning beams began again, thin lines of green and blue light sweeping across the Resolute's hull in slow, deliberate arcs. The readings appeared on the large central screen, line after line of numbers and diagrams scrolling upward. At first, the results were ordinary: compartment layout, reinforced bulkheads, secondary power grids. Then, the system began to reveal details of the main armament. A faint murmur ran through the technician's gallery. The Resolute's primary weapon systems were concealed beneath its outer hull, hidden in such a way that no external observer would know they existed. The weapons were not just powerful, they were far beyond the known output range for a vessel of the Resolute's size. One Marith technician checked his readings twice, then spoke to his superior in a low voice. "These numbers are incorrect. They must be. They are not." The Helrani lead replied without looking up. "The readings match across all scanners. Continue." On the observation deck, the Tauri envoy narrowed his eyes. That output, it could burn through the shields of a dreadnought. The Zarth representative scoffed. "Impossible. Look at the size of the ship. The recoil from such weapons would tear it apart." "Then explain," the Tauri replied quietly. "Why the structural reinforcement scans show something I have never seen." The delegates began to speak in low voices among themselves, no longer focused on making jokes. They were reading the same lines of data as the technicians, and those lines told a story. They did not want to believe. The Resolute's frame was not a traditional skeleton of beams and plates. Instead, it was a fully integrated lattice of composite alloys and energy channels. Every part of the ship's structure helped absorb stress, redirect power, and protect against both physical and energy impacts. The result was a hull that could withstand a direct hit from weapons meant to crack open planetary fortresses. Chief Engineer Solon, standing beside Rian, allowed himself the faintest smile. "They are beginning to see it, Captain." Rian kept his gaze on the holoscreens. "Not yet, but they will." The third scan phase reached the ship's forward sections. It revealed multiple hidden compartments containing equipment the scanners struggled to identify. The algorithms flagged them as unknown configuration, something that happened rarely in the Council's history. One Karun scientist whispered to his colleague, "These readings should be from a research station, not a warship." "Why would humans carry such systems into combat?" another answered. "Because perhaps they know something we do not." The lead technician's voice carried across the chamber again. Scanning main reactor matrix connection points. This was the part Rion had been waiting for. The connection points between the Resolute's reactor and its weapons arrays were not simply armored cables or conduits. They were part of the hull itself, woven into the structure like the veins in a living body. This meant that every weapon on the ship could draw full reactor power instantly, without the usual delays or energy loss. The readings appeared on the main screen, and the room fell silent. A few seconds passed before the Vothar delegate spoke, his voice uncertain for the first time. That cannot be right. No ship can channel full reactor output to all weapons at once without destroying itself. Apparently, replied the Tauri envoy slowly, this one can. On the human balcony, Mara glanced at Rian. They're already questioning what they know. Rian's reply was quiet, and they're only halfway through the scan. The deep mapping continued, tracing the energy lattice through every section of the ship. The holoscreens displayed glowing diagrams of the Resolute's internals, each line representing a path where power, force, or data could move without resistance. The Marith technician shook his head in disbelief. This design, it is not just engineering, it is artistry. By now, the mockery had vanished completely from the observation deck. The delegates leaned close to one another, some with furrowed brows, others with faint frowns of concern. Few simply stared at the screens, saying nothing at all. When the skin reached the stern, another surprise appeared, a secondary drive system that had not been detected in the first phase. It was hidden behind layers of false shielding, designed to look like simple armor. This secondary drive was compact, but its energy output rivaled that of ships twice the Resolute's size. The Karun scientists began speaking rapidly to one another. If that drive is real, it could double the ship's speed in an instant. Combined with the reactor, it would make the vessel untouchable in a direct chase. The Helrani lead technician turned to the high speaker's aide. You are recording all of this? Every line, the aide replied. The third phase of the scan ended with a long tone. The technicians powered down the beams and saved the collected data on the main screen. A final line of text appeared. Assessment. Vessel exceeds known specifications for mass, energy output, and structural resilience. Further study recommended. The high speaker rose from his seat on the observation deck. His expression was calm, but his eyes were fixed on the human balcony. Captain Rian, your ship's systems are remarkable. I believe the Council will have many questions. Rian inclined his head respectfully. I'm ready to answer them, High Speaker. The Zarth representative leaned back, his jaw tight. He said nothing. The delegates began to file out of the deck in small groups, each speaking in hushed tones. The sense of easy superiority that had filled the room earlier was gone. In its place was something heavier, curiosity mixed with the faint edge of unease. From the balcony, Mara allowed herself a small, quiet smile. That was the easy part, sir. Yes, Rian said, watching the alien leaders leave. And the best part is still to come. The third phase of the scan had ended, but the Resolute still stood in the center of the bay, silent as stone. Its black hull caught no light, giving it the look of something that had drifted here from deep, cold space. The technicians were already preparing for the fourth phase, the deep layer analysis that would probe the ship's very core. In the observation deck above, the atmosphere had changed completely. Gone were the smirks and quiet jokes. Now, delegates spoke in low voices, glancing often at the human balcony where Captain Rian stood. Some still doubted, but their confidence had been shaken. Others were already certain. The humans had built something extraordinary. The lead technician, the tall Helrani with 4 arms, moved to the main control podium. Phase 4 will begin now. He announced, we will initiate quantum resonance mapping to examine internal energy stability and identify substructure composition. The words were technical, but the meaning was simple. This phase would reveal whether the Resolute's power systems could sustain their incredible output without catastrophic failure. No one believed it possible, at least not before today. The scanning beams came alive again, this time sharper and thinner, like threads of light weaving over the ship's surface. They slipped through armor, through internal plating, through the hidden channels of the hull. The readings appeared slowly on the main screen, each number confirmed by secondary display. The first result drew immediate reaction from the technicians. Energy bleed is 0, a Marith scientist said aloud. That is impossible. Even the most advanced reactors leak at least some residual power. The Helrani checked the reading himself, running it twice, confirmed. No measurable energy loss across the entire grid. On the observation deck, the Tauri envoy frowned. Even the Council's flagship fleets cannot achieve that. This must be shielded from our scans. The Zarth representative said quickly, clinging to disbelief. They have tricked the sensors. The High Speaker turned his head toward him. Our systems cannot be tricked. We designed them to detect false readings before they appear. The Zarth representative said nothing more. The scans continued, moving deeper into the Resolute structure. The next discovery came when the resonance mapping reached the forward weapon capacitors. The readings showed that these capacitors could store enough energy to fire the main weapons at full strength. Not once, but multiple times, without drawing any additional power from the reactor. The implication was clear, even if the reactor was damaged. The Resolute could keep fighting at near full capacity. Several delegates shifted uneasily in their seats. This was not normal design. This was preparation for worst-case survival, the kind of thinking seen only in species that had fought desperate wars. Lieutenant Mara, watching the shifting expressions above, spoke quietly to Captain Rian. They're not just surprised now. They're starting to be afraid. Rian's voice was calm. Good. Fear makes people careful. We want them careful around us. The readings kept coming. When the beams reached the ship's aft section again, they revealed the true extent of the Resolute's armor. It was not simply thick plating as most had assumed. Beneath the surface was a layered composition of alloys, ceramics, and a strange crystalline material that the scanners could not fully identify. It's resisting. The scan, one of the Karun scientists reported. We can get density readings, but not the exact molecular structure. That should be impossible. The Helrani lead said, adjusting the beam frequency. Nothing resists this level of scan. But the Resolute's hull resisted all the same. A quiet ripple passed through the observation deck. The delegates knew what this meant. The humans had developed materials unknown to the rest of the galaxy, and they were not sharing them. Then came the reading that silenced the room. Completely, the deep skin hit the very core of the Resolute's reactor housing, mapping the heart of the ship's power. The results scrolled onto the holoscreen. Output, 512% of known stable limit. Containment instability, 0.00%. Core temperature variance, 0.0003 degrees over 48-hour cycle. For a long moment, no one spoke. Finally, the Tauri envoy leaned forward. That is not possible. Not even with Council technology. The Karun scientist beside him shook his head slowly. It is possible. We are seeing it with our own eyes. The Helrani lead technician looked toward the High Speaker's seat. High Speaker, this vessel's reactor is operating at a level that defies all known engineering safety limits. Yet it is perfectly stable. The containment field is flawless. The system has no weak points we can detect. From the human balcony, Rian met the High Speaker's gaze but said nothing. The Zarth representative, who had been the loudest critic earlier, now sat motionless. His fingers were curled tightly against the armrest of his seat. One by one, the delegates began to understand the implications. A ship with this kind of power output could run every system at maximum indefinitely. It could fire all weapons, keep all shields at full strength, and still have power left for secondary systems. It could survive battles that would tear apart other warships, and humans had brought it here, into the heart of the Council. Without fear, Lieutenant Mara broke the silence on the balcony. Sir, I think they've stopped looking for errors. Yes, Rian said quietly. Now they're wondering what else they don't know. The Helrani lead's voice carried again. Phase for complete. Final analysis. All systems operating with an optimal efficiency far beyond Council standards. No detectable structural flaws or reactor instability. Recommend full reclassification of vessel's threat rating. The High Speaker nodded once. It will be done. As the technicians powered down the scanners, the delegates remained seated for a moment longer. Some stared at the holoscreens. Others glanced at the humans with new eyes. There was no laughter now, no mocking tone. Only silence and the faint tension of realization. The Zarth representative finally spoke. his voice low. If one human ship can do this, how many more are there? Rian did not answer. He simply turned toward the exit with his officers. The Resolute had spoken for itself, but as he walked, he could feel the shift in the room. Humanity had come here to be measured, and the measure had been taken. Now the galaxy would have to decide what to do with the truth it had seen. The council chamber was quieter than it had been all day. The fourth phase of the scan had ended, but no one was leaving. Delegates remained in their seats, their eyes fixed on the bay below where the Resolute waited. The technicians were already preparing for the final stage of the inspection. Phase rarely used, even for advanced ships. This was the exotic systems scan, designed to detect technology outside normal classification. It was mostly used for alien vessels discovered drifting in deep space, or for ancient relics recovered from lost civilizations. Using it on a newly built human ship was unusual, but now, after the readings so far, no one objected. The Helrani lead technician raised his voice, beginning exotic systems scan. All personnel stand by. Thin arcs of golden light began to move across the Resolute's surface, tracing lines that seemed to sink into the metal itself. These beams were not looking for weapons or armor. They were searching for anything strange, anything the galaxy did not already understand. Almost immediately, the readings caused confusion. Energy signature, shifting, said a Marith technician. No, adapting. It's adapting to the scan. That's not possible, replied a Kroon scientist. A ship's energy field can't think. It can't adjust itself unless manually tuned. It is not manual. The Marith said firmly, this is automatic, responsive. The high speaker leaned slightly forward in his seat, explained. The Helrani lead took a moment before speaking. High speaker, the Resolute's energy shielding is alive in the sense that it learns. It is adjusting its resonance to match the scanning frequency, reducing the amount of data we can take in. From the human balcony, Lieutenant Mara allowed herself a small grin. That's the adaptive field, sir. Looks like it's working. Rhea nodded. Exactly as designed. The delegates above began to speak in low, urgent tones. The adaptive field meant the Resolute could retune its shields in the middle of battle, matching an enemy's weapon frequency and making their attacks useless in Council fleets. Such technology was still experimental and limited. The humans had made it a working reality, but the scan was far from finished. As the beams penetrated deeper, the systems began to detect structures embedded inside the Resolute's hull that didn't match any known ship design. They were not weapons, engines, or shield projectors. Instead, they appeared to be small generators, each producing a field of compressed space around itself. The Kroon scientists stared at the readings. They have gravity wells inside the hull. Dozens of them. What would that achieve? Asked the Tauri envoy. The scientist's voice was low. It would allow the ship to control internal stress from impacts. A blow that should tear it apart would be absorbed by its own gravity fields. The ship could take hits that would destroy anything else. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder. No one mocked now. They were too busy trying to understand how a so-called newcomer race had leapt so far ahead in certain technologies. The scan continued toward the central spine of the ship. There, the sensors found something that made the technicians stop and recheck their instruments 3 times. Quantum core detected, the Helrani lead announced, his voice carrying an edge of disbelief. The high speaker frowned. Impossible. No one has made a stable quantum core. It is theoretical. It is no longer theoretical, the Helrani replied. The Resolute has won, and it is active. The term alone was enough to send whispers across the chamber. A quantum core was the dream of every ship engineer in the galaxy, a system that could process data and execute commands instantaneously, without the limits of traditional computers. With such a core, a ship's reaction time in battle would be faster than the crew's ability to give orders. It could anticipate, adapt, and respond in ways no opponent could match. Lieutenant Mara looked toward Rian. They'll never believe. It's real until they see it in action. They'll see enough today, Rian said. The technicians pressed on, determined now to uncover every secret the Resolute held. The skin reached the vessel's secondary decks and found yet another. Surprise! A network of small, shielded chambers, each containing what appeared to be a compact fusion plant, multiple reactors. The Tauri envoy asked. Not reactors, the Karun scientist corrected, his tone almost grudging. They are emergency power cells, enough to keep the ship running for months even if the main core is destroyed. The implication was obvious. The Resolute could be crippled and still remain in the fight. By the time the scan neared completion, the technicians had assembled a list of systems that, by all normal measures, should not have existed together on a single vessel. Adaptive shields, internal gravity wells, a functioning quantum core, redundant power cells, a main reactor far beyond safety limits but perfectly stable, weapons capable of breaching top-tier Council defenses, armor that resisted the galaxy's most advanced scans. The golden beams faded at last, and the readings froze on the main screen. For a long time, no one in the chamber spoke. Finally, the Helrani League gave his conclusion. High Speaker, the human vessel Resolute contains a combination of technologies that exceed current Council standards in multiple fields. Some of these technologies were believed to be impossible. Others are simply beyond our present understanding. This is no prototype. It is fully operational and battle-ready. The High Speaker's gaze moved to the human balcony. Captain Rion, you have brought us a ship that challenges the limits of what we believe possible. I suspect the Council will wish to discuss your methods. Rion inclined his head. We came here to be honest about our capabilities. You have the facts now. On the observation deck, the Zarth representative sat silently, his earlier mockery replaced by something colder, calculation. The Tauri envoy's expression was unreadable, but his eyes stayed on the humans. The Karun scientists, meanwhile, were already discussing among themselves, their voices tight with both fascination and unease. Lieutenant Mara broke the quiet on the balcony. They know what this means. Yes, Rion replied, his tone even, and soon they'll have to decide how they feel about it. As the Resolute stood beneath the now dormant scanners, its dark armor seeming to defy the light around it, the galaxy's leaders faced a truth they had not expected. Humanity was not simply catching up, it was racing ahead, in whatever path the future took. Nothing would be the same after this day. The Council chamber was silent now. The skin had ended, leaving a tension in the air that felt almost physical. Every delegate knew the human vessel was unlike anything they had ever seen. Every scientist, every military officer, every envoy, even those who had laughed before, now sat in quiet amazement. Captain Rion stepped forward from the human balcony. His posture was steady, his eyes calm. He knew this was the moment humanity had been preparing for. Not to show power for its own sake, but to explain the reason behind it. The High Speaker leaned forward. Captain Rion, the Council has observed your vessel. The scan reveals that it exceeds all expectations in multiple fields. We now ask you to explain why your people have built such a ship. Rion nodded. He allowed a moment for the delegates to settle their attention fully on him. Honored members of the Galactic Council, I will answer simply. Humanity built the Resolute because we must, because when we look to the stars, we see that threats can appear suddenly. We see that no one else can predict everything, and we believe that we must be able to protect ourselves and those we care about, and, when necessary, others who cannot protect themselves. A murmur ran through the observation deck. Delegates exchanged glances, some skeptical, others thoughtful. The Zarth representative finally spoke, his tone cautious. Captain, many species have defenses, weapons, and powerful ships. What makes yours so exceptional? Rion's voice was calm, but it carried weight. What makes the Resolute exceptional is not just the weapons or shields. It is the thought behind them. Every system, every redundancy, every innovation was designed with one goal in mind: survival in circumstances that others might consider impossible. Humanity does not rely on chance. We do not assume others will save us. We prepare for everything, and we build for resilience, adaptability, and endurance. Some delegates leaned forward, some whispered, The Tauri envoy raised a clawed hand, and yet, he said, your ship surpasses even the Council's best designs in certain fields. How did you achieve this? Rian looked across the room. Making eye contact with several representatives at once, we learned from mistakes. We studied other species' designs, combined them with our own innovations, and pushed further. We asked ourselves one question constantly: if our survival depended on it, what will we need? Then we build it, not to dominate, not to intimidate, but to be prepared for the unknown. A silence followed. The delegates were beginning to understand that this was more than simple engineering. This was philosophy translated into technology. Humanity had built a vessel not just to fight, but to survive against any odds. The high speaker leaned forward, his voice calm but probing. Captain, are you implying that humans intend to join the Council as equals in defense and diplomacy? Rian nodded. We intend to join as equals, yes, but we also intend to ensure that no species under our watch faces threats without help. We will not act aggressively, but we will act decisively when danger approaches. The Tauri envoy studied him carefully. And you believe that your people, in such a short time, are capable of this level of responsibility? Rian smiled faintly. We do not claim perfection, but we do claim preparation. We claim adaptability. And we claim that when faced with impossible odds, humanity will find a way. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. The weight of his words began to sink in. Humans were no longer just young newcomers. They were a species willing to leap forward, willing to challenge assumptions, and willing to stand ready for threats the galaxy had not yet imagined. Lieutenant Mara whispered to Rian, "They're listening now. They've stopped doubting." "Good." Rian replied, "Now we show them what humanity is willing to do for others, not just ourselves." He gestured slightly to the scanning bay below. Though the Resolute was now calm and silent, every delegate had seen the systems it contained, weapons that could strike a fleet before the enemy even knew what happened, shields that could adapt instantly, a reactor beyond their understanding, and a quantum core that allowed instantaneous response. These systems, Rian continued, are not for show. They are proof of our approach. Think ahead, plan for survival, and act with responsibility. We do not seek to conquer. We do not seek to rule. We seek to ensure that no one suffers because the galaxy was unprepared. The Karun scientist finally spoke up, his buzzing voice quiet but firm. Captain Rian, if these claims are true, the human people are capable of unprecedented influence in galactic affairs. That is remarkable. Yes, Rian said, and we do not intend to wield that influence recklessly. The Resolute is only the beginning of how we plan to participate responsibly among the stars. A murmur went through the observation deck. Delegates began whispering among themselves, comparing what they had known about humans with what they had just witnessed. The mockery and amusement of earlier cycles were gone. Now there was curiosity, respect, and even cautious admiration. The Zarth representative finally looked at Rian directly. "Captain, you have changed our perception of humanity in one day. But how can we trust that your people will always act as you say?" Rian's eyes were steady. "Trust is earned. We expect the Council to judge us not by words, but by actions. The Resolute demonstrates our ability. Our future decisions will demonstrate our intent." The Tauri envoy, who had been quiet for most of the speech, spoke next. "Then you are offering the galaxy a partnership built on capability and responsibility, not just power." "Exactly," Rian replied. "We want to be part of the galaxy, not above it. We are strong, yes, but we are stronger when we cooperate and protect what matters. That is the purpose behind the Resolute, and behind every ship humanity builds: survival, preparation, and readiness for the unexpected." For several moments, the chamber remained silent. The delegates were processing not just the technical achievements, but the philosophy that guided them. The Resolute was more than a warship. It was a symbol of human thought, foresight, resilience, and responsibility in a galaxy full of uncertainty. The High Speaker finally spoke, his tone thoughtful. "Captain Rian, your people have brought us a vessel that challenges our understanding and expands our expectations. The Council will take time to study this fully, but I believe your explanation has begun to answer the question of why humans are capable of such innovation. Your approach is unique. Rian inclined his head. We hope it inspires cooperation, not fear. That is our intention. Outside the chamber, the council representatives continued to murmur among themselves. Some were skeptical, yes, but most had seen the impossible with their own eyes. Humans had not only built a ship that defied limits, they had done it with a purpose that even the most cautious delegates could respect. Lieutenant Mara looked at Rian, her eyes bright. They're starting to understand. The mockery is gone. Yes, Rian said softly. And from this moment, the galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. As the Resolute remained in the scanning bay, dark and silent, it seemed almost alive, as though it knew it had just changed history. And in the council chamber, delegates could not stop thinking about the consequences of what they had seen. The impossible had become real, and the humans had arrived. The council chamber remained unusually quiet. The scans, the revelations, and Captain Rian's explanation had left an impression no one could ignore. Delegates leaned in their seats, whispering in low tones. Some still struggled to believe everything they had seen. Others were beginning to accept the reality of humanity's capabilities. Captain Rian stepped forward again. His posture was calm, his presence firm but not threatening. Behind him, the Resolute rested in the bay, its dark hull reflecting the soft lights of the chamber. Every delegate could see it, every delegate could remember it. The High Speaker rose, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure. Council members, today we have witnessed something extraordinary. A human ship, the Resolute, has demonstrated technology that exceeds our expectations in ways that challenge our understanding. This council must consider the implications. Murmurs ran across the deck. The Tauri envoy leaned over to a Karoon colleague. I admit, I never thought humans could build such systems so quickly. The Karen's buzzing voice carried a hint of wonder. Nor I yet here it is, in front of us. The Zarth representative, who had been quiet for most of the day, finally spoke. Captain Rian, your people have not only presented power, but a philosophy. You claim responsibility, preparation, and protection as your purpose. If true, this is unprecedented among newcomers to the Council. Rian nodded. It is true. Humanity does not build power for dominance. We build it for survival, for readiness, and for the safety of those who cannot protect themselves. The Resolute is a tool, yes, but it is also a statement. We will act when necessary, but not recklessly. A pause followed as delegates absorbed his words. Some frowned thoughtfully. Others exchanged glances that spoke volumes, respect, cautious, admiration, and the first signs of understanding. The High Speaker spoke again. Captain, the Council has debated among ourselves. We acknowledge the magnitude of what has been shown. Humans have not only built a ship that exceeds expectations, but they have done so with a purpose that aligns with the principles of the Council. This is rare. From the balcony, Lieutenant Mara whispered to Rian, Sir, they're taking it seriously now. No one dares challenge us openly. Rian allowed himself a faint smile. That is good. Let us see how far understanding can go. The High Speaker continued. We cannot ignore the implications of this day. We must consider humans as capable allies and responsible participants in the galaxy's future. Captain Rian, we formally invite your people to join discussions on defense, cooperation, and technology sharing. This council recognizes that your capabilities are real, and your intentions, if consistent, honorable. The room was alive now with a quiet, intense energy. Delegates whispered among themselves, analyzing the Resolute, the readings, and Rian's words. For the first time, humans were not seen as young or inexperienced. They were respected. The Tauri envoy finally stood, his tone firm but measured. Captain Rian, your people have earned consideration. We cannot ignore what we have witnessed. Perhaps we have judged humans too quickly in the past. It appears your actions speak louder than any assumptions or prejudice. The Zarth representative nodded slowly. Yes, today, humans have shown us that they are not only capable, but thoughtful, prepared, and willing to act with caution. That deserves respect. Even the Karoon scientists, who were usually blunt and dismissive leaned closer together, whispering about how humanity had achieved feats they thought impossible. Captain Rion addressed the chamber one last time. Honored council members, humans do not seek glory or dominance. We seek readiness, knowledge, and understanding. We will work alongside you not because we must, but because we believe cooperation strengthens all. This is our pledge, to act with responsibility, to respect life, and to prepare for challenges no one can yet see. The Resolute is a promise that humans will not be ignored and that we will protect, adapt, and endure. The High Speaker's eyes softened. Your words have weight, Captain, and your ship has demonstrated that humans are more than capable. The Council will deliberate on your invitation, but for now, it is clear that your people have arrived. The galaxy will notice. Delegates slowly began to stand, bowing slightly or inclining their heads in acknowledgement. The initial mockery and that of earlier hours had been replaced by something stronger, respect. The Towery envoy approached Rion briefly. Captain, you have changed minds today. Not just mine, but many here. It is rare for a species to earn such recognition in one demonstration. Well done. Rion inclined his head. Thank you. We will continue to act in ways that prove our intentions. Actions, not words, will define us. Lieutenant Mara looked out over the chamber, noting the subtle nods and whispered exchanges. Sir, they're already talking about ways to cooperate. They're considering us as equals. Yes, Rion replied. And that is the beginning of something greater. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy seemed to shift slowly. Word of the Resolute and its demonstration began to spread quickly. Across star systems, species who had once dismissed humanity now paused to reconsider. Communications channels buzzed with discussions about the humans' technology, philosophy, and courage. Even distant fleets altered patrols and plans to account for the newcomers whose abilities could not be ignored. The Resolute itself remained in the bay, calm and silent, as though it understood the significance of the day. The ship had proven its worth, but more importantly, it had proven the worth of its people. In the quiet moments after the council meeting, Captain Rion and Lieutenant Mars stood together on the balcony. Mars said softly, Sir, I think today, humanity earned its place in the galaxy. Rion gazed down at the dark hull of the Resolute, the glow of the scanning equipment fading behind it. We earned recognition, yes, but earning a place means continuing to prove ourselves. Today is the start, not the end. Mars smiled faintly. Then let's be ready for the next challenge. They'll expect more from us now. Rion nodded. Exactly. We do not retreat from expectation. We rise to meet it. The delegates below had begun to leave the chamber, but their whispers carried a new tone. No longer mockery or doubt. Now there was cautious admiration, analysis, and even tentative excitement about what humanity could bring to the galaxy. And so the day ended. A human ship, small compared to some of the Council's largest vessels, had challenged assumptions, silenced skeptics, and inspired respect. The Resolute had not fired a shot. No weapon had been used. Yet in demonstrating ingenuity, resilience, and purpose, humanity had made its presence known in a way no battle could match. Captain Rion turned to leave the balcony, his officers following. The galaxy is watching, he said quietly. Yes, sir, Mar replied, and now it knows humans are not to be underestimated. As the Resolute stood in the bay, dark, calm, and unyielding, it carried the promise of humanity, preparation for the impossible, courage in the face of doubt, and the ability to rise above every challenge. Today, humans had earned respect. Tomorrow, they would shape the future. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible, and humanity had made it real.